Welcome to the module 3.4 Mechanism of Gaseous Exchange. The true purpose of respiration is to support in gaseous exchange. In this module we will discuss on how it happens in our lungs. You may wonder, why did I put this particular slide of pulmonary circulation in this module of respiratory system? Yes, pulmonary circulation is closely associated with the respiratory system because pulma means lungs and pulmonary circulation is carrying blood through the lungs. So, to quickly recap, pulmonary circulation, it begins in the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery, through the lungs, the blood circulates and it returns back to the heart via pulmonary veins and it opens at the left atrium. So, this pathway of blood beginning from right ventricle through the pulmonary artery, through the lungs, through the pulmonary vein to the left atrium contributes to the pulmonary circulation. So, what happens here in the pulmonary circulation? The blood which is circulated to the body parts are drained back to the heart in the right atrium, and blood from the right atrium flows into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, the oxygen depleted blood is carried to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. And in the lungs, the pulmonary artery makes its primary, secondary and tertiary branchings, and it forms a very dense capillary network surrounding the alveoli, and they reunites to form the pulmonary vein that leaves the lungs. So, the gaseous exchange is going to happen in the pulmonary capillary bed. So, the discussion is shown as a pictorial representation here. From the heart, the blood, the color is shown as blue because oxygen depleted blood is indicated here in the blue color. From the heart, through the right ventricle, through the pulmonary artery, through the pulmonary arteriole, pulmonary capillaries, the deoxygenated blood reaches, and across the gaseous capillary barrier the gaseous exchange will happen, and from there, from the capillaries, oxygen rich blood is recirculated through the pulmonary veins through, and it enters the left atrium. From the left atrium it enters into the left ventricle and they are dispatched to the systemic circulation. When we talk about the structures that supply the respiratory zones, this particular slide, it takes back to the module 1, where the trachea branches into the bronchi, bronchioles, bronchioles and respiratory bronchioles that enters into the alveolar duct and the alveoli. So, here this structure clearly helps us to understand how this branchings and bifurcations are happening in our respiratory tract. So, the alveolar duct, it is nothing but the tube opening into the clusters of alveoli. So, previously we have discussed that alveoli is a structure that is like a grapes, like they are sacs of structure that resembles the fruit grape. So, alveolus is a small grape like sac and it is attached to the alveolar duct. So, the gases or the air enters the alveoli only through the alveolar duct, and the diameter or dimensions of the alveolus is about 200 millimeter and it is very elastic in nature. The alveoli walls are elastic in nature. So, what is this alveolar sac? It is nothing but a single unit is called as an alveoli, cluster of many individual alveoli together, it is called as the alveolar sac. So, what is this alveolar pore? So, many alveoli together forms the alveolar sac, and there should be some sort of communications to happen between individual alveoli, and it is possible through this alveolar pores. So, these pores are going to interconnect between the individual alveoli. A helps in maintaining the air pressure throughout the alveoli and the air sac and the lungs altogether. I hope you can remember what is the role of a surfactant in an alveoli and how it is helping out in keeping these elastic alveoli open throughout the cycles of respiration. This particular picture of respiratory zone is one of my favorite image, which beautifully shows the parts of respiratory zone. In this we can clearly see the respiratory bronchioli ending into the alveolar duct and alveolar duct opening into the alveolar sac. We can see a beautiful clusters of alveoli that form sacs of that resembles the sacs of grapes, and we can see individual alveoli and a cross section of the alveoli showing us the alveolar pores that helps in interconnection between the individual alveoli. We can see a very dense network of capillary bed surrounding individual alveoli. The ultimate purpose of respiration is what? Gaseous exchange. For effective gaseous exchange, we need to bring both the gaseous source and the transportation source in a closer proximity. So, it is here in this capillary bed, the gases from the respiration reaches its end node, that is the alveoli, and capillary brings the blood very near to the alveoli where oxygen rich air is drawn in during inspiration, and capillaries are bringing the oxygen depleted blood nearby a oxygen rich source. So, what happens? Effective gaseous exchange will take place, and the structure of alveoli is somewhat circular round shape, and this increases the surface area, and the surface tension will keep of the surfactants will keep the alveoli open, and the capillary network surrounding the alveoli will enhance the effectiveness of gaseous movement across the membranes of the alveoli and the capillary. Don't you wonder how beautiful this organization is? This picture is showing us the cross section of the alveoli and the capillary network boundary. The left side of the second image is the alveoli and the membrane of the alveoli, which is surrounded by a capillary vessel, a single vessel, and the vessel is the capillary is a single walled blood vessel. It is made up of only tunica intima, so it is a perforated thin epithelial lining. So, the exchange of material can easily happen across a capillary vessel. So, in this picture we shall see that left side is the alveoli and right side is the capillary, and gases from the alveoli, that is oxygen from the alveoli, diffuses through this alveolar and capillary membrane into the blood vessel, and carbon dioxide, which is rich in the incoming blood, is diffuses back into the alveoli through the same mechanism. So, the component of blood that is responsible for carrying these gases are the red blood corpuscles, or which is called as RBCs. The RBCs, which is bringing oxygen depleted blood cells, where enters the capillary, and when they leave the alveoli surrounding capillary, they leave as oxygen rich blood. This image shows us clearly the alveoli capillary exchange surface. We can see the layers of alveolus, the layers of capillaries, and in between there is an interstitial space. If we have a close look of the alveolar layers, it has an epithelium, alveolar epithelium, and it has a basement membrane to it, and it has its inner surface lined by a fluid which is nothing but the surfactants that is secreted by the inner side layer. And if we look at the capillary, as I mentioned earlier, it is a single layered membrane, and the membrane is endothelium, capillary endothelium with a basement. So the capillary is going to conduct blood, and the blood is made up of formed elements, of which RBC is carrying oxygen. So if we look into the mechanism, I repeatedly say it is by diffusion, and to define diffusion, it is nothing but movement of materials across a region driven by the concentration gradient. It is from higher concentration to lower concentration. So here, in this particular junction, in this particular region, the alveolus internal side has got oxygen rich air, and the capillary side has got RBC, which is oxygen depleted. So by diffusion, the oxygen from the higher concentration region will move into the lower concentration region. So oxygen will move from alveoli to the RBC, and this oxygen depleted RBC is having carbon dioxide concentration more. So if we look into the carbon dioxide concentration across this barrier, the carbon dioxide is rich in capillaries, and its concentration is poor in alveoli. So eventually carbon dioxide from the RBCs diffuses into the alveoli by the same mechanism. This is how gaseous exchange is happening in the alveoli capillary bed. This particular slide helps us to have a very closer look into the constituents of alveolus and the wall, interalveolar wall. We can see capillary shaded in red and colored cells like type 1 pneumocytes, which is forming the inner circular region. It is just covering the entire inner surface of the alveoli, and it is going to constitute about 97% of the total alveolus surface area. So what the ultimate purpose of this type 1 cell is to enable permeability of the gases. So it increases the permeability of the alveoli to diffusion of the gases, and it is about 25 nanometer in thickness. The next cell, which is shaded in pink color in this picture, is type 2 alveolar cell. It is called as pneumonocytes. Pneumonocytes are dispersed cells that is found in between the type 1 cells, and they secretes the pulmonary surfactants. So these surfactants are responsible for maintaining the buoyancy of the alveoli, which gives the surface tension to keep the alveolus non-collapsible during the cycles of respiration. This I keep on saying in all the slides. So I want you all to go back to understand the constituents of the surfactants and their role in detailed manner. There is another type of cell that we can see here is which is shaded in blue color is the macrophages. They are alveolar macrophages because though the alveoli is deeply present within our respiratory system, since the air from the outer atmosphere is reaching this particular end of the alveoli, the air can take infectious pathogens along with it. So it has to be prevented from entering into the vital systems. So this alveolar macrophages are phagocytic cells that are part of the immune system, and they are extensively located in this junction of alveolar and interalveolar walls because this particular region is highly exposed to infectious organism. This macrophages engulfs the pathogen and digests them, and thus helps in preventing the spread of any infections through the respiratory tract. To summarize, the alveoli is the structural and functional unit of respiration because the true gaseous exchange is happening in this region. I conclude this discussion of this module here. Thank you.